Fantasy Football Week 8 is here, and it's time to look at this week's biggest fades and busts. Remember, a fade doesn't always mean you must bench the player, but it does mean expectations should be lowered. Some big names might let you down this week, so let's get into it. Daniel Jones has been on fire recently, leading one of the league's most efficient offenses and scoring over 20 fantasy points in back-to-back weeks. But this matchup with Tennessee could cool him off. The Titans have allowed the 8th fewest fantasy points to quarterbacks this season, mostly because opponents run all over them instead of passing. That likely means more work for Jonathan Taylor and fewer big plays from Jones. Without a rushing touchdown, he's averaged under 17 points per game. If you've got a solid backup like Bo Nix or Drake May, it's reasonable to consider them instead. Next up, Rhamondre Stevenson. Don't be fooled by his recent stat lines. Those touchdowns came against some of the weakest run defenses in football. This week, he faces Cleveland, arguably the worst possible matchup for running backs. Outside of those scoring bursts, Stevenson has struggled mightily, putting up just 1.8 points in a game against the Saints earlier this year. Expect more of the same against a dominant Browns front. Keep him on the bench if you can. Jacory Croskey-Merritt has been an unpredictable ride for fantasy managers. Despite flashes of brilliance, he's posted single-digit points in 5 of his last 6 outings. Now, with Marcus Mariota starting in place of Jaden Daniels, Croskey-Merritt's upside looks even lower. The Chiefs' defense has been stingy, and his lack of involvement in the passing game makes him hard to trust. Unless you're desperate, it's best to look elsewhere. Xavier Worthy continues to disappoint fantasy owners despite being tied to Patrick Mahomes. With Rashee Rice back, Worthy's target share has plummeted, and he's now gone 3 straight games with single-digit fantasy totals. Yes, the Commanders' defense looks like a good matchup on paper, but it's hard to trust a player whose production depends solely on a lucky deep touchdown. You're better off rolling with more stable options like Jordan Addison or Khalil Shakir. DJ Moore's decline has been tough to watch. Once a dependable fantasy starter, he's now averaging barely 7 points a week and hasn't topped 10 since week 3. Even with a seemingly favorable matchup against Baltimore, Moore hasn't shown any real spark in this offense. You're likely looking at another modest outing of 40 yards or less. It might finally be time to move on. And finally, Mark Andrews. Once a fantasy superstar, Andrews has become one of the biggest disappointments at tight end. Outside of one big performance against Detroit, he hasn't topped 30 receiving yards all season. With the Ravens' offense sputtering and Lamar Jackson's inconsistency, Andrews no longer feels like a must-start. If you can snag someone like Dalton Schultz or Evan Engram, they might actually give you a better shot this week. Fantasy football is all about managing expectations, and sometimes the best move is knowing when to pivot. Keep your roster flexible, trust the matchups, and don't let big names blind you from making the smarter play.